I'll be straight with you. I sat on this for a few days. Not because I wasn't sure what I thought, but because I wanted to be certain before I opened my mouth. I went back through everything. The quotes, the footage, the press conference transcripts, the sideline footage that most people scrolled past. And honestly, the more I dug, the more convinced I became. What the media is telling you about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation and what is actually going down inside that building are two completely different stories. And I don't mean slightly different. I mean the gap between those two versions has grown so wide, so fast, that somebody needed to sit down, roll up their sleeves, and walk through it piece by piece. Carefully, honestly, without an agenda. That somebody is me, so buckle up, because we're going deep today. If you're new here, by the way, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and stay a while. This channel is where we do the work that most people skip. Let's build this from the ground floor, because without the foundation, the whole thing falls apart. The Browns held a 3-day voluntary veteran minicamp back in April. 3 days, voluntary, no pads, no live pass rush, no defensive backs getting physical with receivers running real routes through actual coverage, no competitive stakes attached to a single snap. Zero. Now, when a franchise brings in a brand new head coach, the NFL carves out this very specific window of time for a reason. It's a short orientation stretch where the coaching staff installs terminology, lays down the philosophical groundwork of how they intend to operate, and starts building a shared language, a kind of football dialect between the coaches and a roster that is still figuring out how this particular staff thinks, communicates, and makes decisions. That is the entire purpose of what went on during those 3 days. Nothing more, nothing less. Todd Monken stood in front of the press after those sessions and told them exactly that, plainly, openly, without any spin. He described what he'd observed as a 40,000-foot view. He was being transparent. He was, in the simplest and most direct language possible, telling every single person in that room, do not read too much into any of this. He basically handed the media a flashing neon sign that said, don't overreact, and then watched them walk straight past it. And then the coverage happened. And wow, did it happen fast. Within hours, the takes were fully assembled, packaged up, and already traveling at full speed across every platform. Deshaun Watson had supposedly seized control of the room. The veteran looked commanding, purposeful, clearly ahead of everyone else. And Shedeur Sanders? He was falling behind. One outlet, and this is the one that genuinely keeps me up at night, actually floated the idea that Shedeur might not even hold down the backup spot, third string, on a depth chart. After 72 hours of helmets and shorts walk-through sessions during a voluntary spring practice, that idea didn't just get published, it got amplified. Show to show, platform to platform. The sheer repetition of it started doing what repetition always does in sports media. It started generating its own credibility, like a rumor at a high school that gets repeated so many times people forget nobody ever actually verified it. People who hadn't formed a real opinion yet heard it enough times that it started feeling like established fact, like consensus, like something everyone just quietly agreed on while nobody was checking the receipts. And I keep coming back to the same question every single time I run through this. What is the actual evidence underneath any of it? What exactly did Monken say that justifiably produced these conclusions? Because here is what he actually said, not the headline, not the convenient summarized version somebody shaped to fit the story they'd already decided to tell, but the real, full, substantive content of what came out of his mouth when he addressed those reporters. He said the practice script gave Shedeur more overall repetitions across all 3 days. He explained that certain practice windows were deliberately structured around run game work, and that run-heavy periods naturally compress meaningful quarterback snaps regardless of who's under center. creating a visual impression of imbalance that had absolutely nothing to do with the actual quarterback work distribution. He said Shedeur Sanders took the first reps in 11-on-11 team drills first, and then he said the rotation would shift from day to day, and that no competitive conclusion should be drawn from the sequencing of any single session. I need you to actually sit with that for a second and feel the weight of that gap. The head coach of the Cleveland Browns, on the record, explaining the rep distribution, breaking down the visual optics, and telling the room directly that Shedeur went first in team drills. And the story that emerged from that same press conference was Watson asserting veteran dominance while Shedeur struggled to keep pace. That is not a difference in analytical interpretation. That is a conscious, deliberate decision about which facts get carried into the story and which ones get quietly left on the press conference floor. And that decision was not accidental, not even close. Drop a comment below. Does this bother you as much as it bothers me? Because it should. Now let me slow this down and take you to Miami. Because this moment in Shedeur's offseason is one I keep returning to. And I genuinely don't think it's received even a fraction of the serious attention it deserves. He was down there doing private training work, the invisible kind. The early morning, nobody is watching, no cameras, no content cycle, no organized audience kind of work that either happens or doesn't happen entirely based on personal commitment. Before anyone had a reason to be looking, before it was useful for his brand. Just a quarterback and a football and the quiet, unglamorous repetition work that separates the people who say they want it from the ones who actually chase it at dawn. A content creator found him there. A streamer looking to capture some footage of Shedeur throwing roots. Something shareable. Something that could move online and build the kind of social momentum that young players in his position genuinely need right now. Visibility matters in the narrative game. Everyone knows that, and Shedeur said no. Not rudely, not dismissively, but with a calm, quiet clarity that told you everything you actually need to know about what's really driving this young man. He told that creator, in effect, when you see a football in my hands, understand what it means. Minicamp is coming. Training camp is coming. I have a position to earn and a competition ahead of me that I cannot afford to treat casually for a single day. Come back when that's over. I want you to genuinely feel what that decision cost him in that specific moment, because the cost is real and it doesn't get talked about enough. He is competing against a quarterback who is owed $46 million by the very organization they both play for. Money that doesn't move. That doesn't adjust. That doesn't shrink based on anything that happens on a depth chart or in a training camp rep count. That financial commitment creates something I'd describe as organizational gravity, a slow, steady, invisible institutional pull toward making that investment look justified, toward finding a way, any way, to validate what has already been spent, even when the on-field evidence starts pointing clearly in a different direction. Shedeur operates inside that gravitational pull every single day. He can feel it. Anyone paying close enough attention inside that building can feel it. And in the middle of an offseason where he desperately needs positive narrative momentum, needs visibility, needs every story working in his favor, his response to the content creator is to send him away and go back to his footwork. That is what real competitive seriousness looks like when nobody is watching or grading it. And that quality, maintained consistently under exactly that kind of pressure, is the thing that ultimately determines whether a quarterback rises to the moment when everything is real, or only performs when the conditions are comfortable. If you appreciate someone actually laying this out honestly, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel more than you know. Josh Cribbs said things about this situation that deserved far more serious engagement than they got. And I want to spend real time here because the framing of his comments matters enormously. First, let's be clear about who Josh Cribbs actually is in this specific context. Not a television personality chasing airtime, not someone manufacturing controversy to stay relevant. One of the most genuinely beloved figures in the entire modern history of Cleveland Browns football. A man who poured everything he had, physically, emotionally, across the complete arc of his career in that city. Who earned the right to be heard through years of sacrifice on that field. Whose credibility with the real Cleveland fan base is the kind that doesn't erode because it was never manufactured to begin with. When someone with that kind of standing says something uncomfortable about the franchise's direction, you engage with it at the level it deserves. You don't reduce it to just another hot take. What Cribbs said was direct. He wants Shedeur Sanders to receive a genuine evaluation, not a managed one, not one where the organizational decision has already been quietly shaped by financial considerations operating in the background, but a real evaluation built on competitive evidence gathered under real conditions. He wants to see what this quarterback actually is when given a full offseason, a coaching staff genuinely invested in his development, and real organizational clarity about who the future belongs to. Conditions, by the way, that his entire first professional season never once provided. And when you actually look at what that first season involved, calling it difficult is a breathtaking understatement. Shedeur played inside a franchise in structural chaos, ownership dynamics in transition, an offensive line that couldn't consistently protect him, a receiving room that was incomplete in ways that made his job categorically harder on nearly every snap. And across 7 starts under those conditions, he competed at a level that earned Pro Bowl recognition from the players and coaches watching him do it. Not a sympathy vote, not a charity nod. A deliberate collective judgment from people who watch professional football for a living, that what they were witnessing from a rookie operating in a broken environment was genuinely remarkable. And still, the coverage consistently positions him as the problem, the one with the questions around him, the one whose family is somehow a distraction, while Deshaun Watson, nearly 2 full years removed from meaningful NFL football, carrying 2 Achilles ruptures and one of the most complicated recent histories at the quarterback position, gets framed as the misunderstood veteran whose best football is simply waiting for the right system to unlock it. Look at that contrast directly. Then ask yourself honestly whose interests it serves. The Baker Mayfield reference that Cribbs dropped hit me harder than almost anything else in this conversation. And it was absolutely meant to land that hard. He didn't throw that name out casually. He dropped it fully loaded with everything it carries in Cleveland specifically. All the weight, all the pain, all the complicated, difficult recognition of what that franchise allowed to walk out the door before it ever had the conditions to show them what it genuinely was. Mayfield was pushed out. The organizational patience ran thin before the environment was ever truly right. The narrative turned against him, and then he went somewhere that actually believed in him, and he won a Super Bowl ring. Cribbs was asking Cleveland a question so precise, so pointed, it's almost brutal in its honesty. Are you really about to replay this? Are you going to let the sunk cost pressure of $46 million already committed, the institutional desire to justify the most expensive decision in franchise history, the noise, the confident declarations, the repetition of a verdict that was formed before the evidence existed? Are you going to let all of that cost you something real? Something that hasn't even had the environment yet to show you what it truly is? That is not rhetoric designed to generate clicks. That is the defining question of what Cleveland builds from this point forward. And the franchise's answer to it will echo across the next decade in either direction. This is the kind of crossroads moment that franchises either get right or spend years regretting. The financial argument for centering Watson in this competition gets made constantly, and I want to engage with it honestly. Because on the surface, the logic sounds reasonable. The $46 million doesn't disappear based on depth chart decisions. It's committed regardless of who lines up under center in September. So the argument runs. If you're paying him either way, why not give him every opportunity to justify it? I understand the arithmetic, I really do. But here's the thing that argument consistently refuses to sit with. Every snap Watson takes is a snap Shedeur Sanders does not take. Development at the quarterback position is not a savings account. You cannot defer the reps, hold them in reserve, and cash them in later when you decide the timing is right. A quarterback grows through specific repetitions, accumulated under specific competitive pressure, with specific coaching attention applied at a specific point in his development arc. That window is not permanent. It does not wait. The real cost of building this competition around Watson's contract is not measured in any budget line. It is measured in the trajectory of the quarterback who is supposed to represent what this franchise becomes next. That cost doesn't appear on any spreadsheet, which may be precisely why it keeps getting overlooked by the people most comfortable. When their analysis comes packaged with numbers they can comfortably point to, I want to address the third string, projection directly, because it is, without any qualification whatsoever, the most analytically reckless claim to emerge from this entire coverage cycle. The conclusion that Shedeur might not hold the backup spot rests almost entirely on the visual impression of 3 days of voluntary minicamp practice. No pads, no live competition, no pressure conditions that would produce evaluation worth trusting. 3 days, and the head coach said, with his own voice, on the record, that he had not named a starter, would not be drawing competitive conclusions from an April voluntary session, that the rep distribution favored Shedeur overall, and that Shedeur went first in team drills. That information existed. It was publicly available to every single person covering this story, and certain voices still produced confident third-string projections from the same evidence set. That is not a conclusion that grew organically from what was observed. That is a conclusion that was formed before the observation happened and then went looking for whatever fragments could make it resemble reasoning. From far enough away, it looks like sports analysis. Examined closely, it's something else entirely. And if this kind of breakdown is what you come here for, real analysis, not recycled narratives, then subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. This is what we do here every single time. There is a genuine schematic football question buried inside all of this that receives almost zero serious analytical attention. And the neglect of it genuinely puzzles me every time I think about it. Monken constructed one of the most dynamic electric offenses in the entire league during his time in Baltimore. And the load-bearing structure of everything he built there was Lamar Jackson, one of the most singularly unique athletic weapons the quarterback position has ever seen. A player whose legs fundamentally rewired every defensive calculation on every single snap of every game. Now look at who is competing in Cleveland. Shedeur Sanders is a pocket quarterback. His entire game is built on timing, precision, structural accuracy, rapid coverage processing, and clean delivery inside a system designed around exactly those qualities. Deshaun Watson, at his absolute best in Houston, was a dual-threat quarterback whose most defining plays consistently required his legs to change the arithmetic of down after down. If Monken is now constructing an offense in Cleveland that places pocket efficiency, timing, and system accuracy at its operational center, then everything about his offensive history suggests that is exactly what he does. When he has a capable pocket passer available, then the honest football. Question is whether Sanders is actually the more natural, schematic match for what this coaching staff is trying to build. That question is not getting the serious engagement it deserves. And I think the reason it isn't is that answering it honestly complicates the narrative that has already been built, packaged, and sold to a very large audience.